To meet the need for an educated workforce and close achievement gaps, early education is crucial, but the supply is limited. That also applies to compensation and career opportunities for the state's early education workforce. A report on barriers confronting the workforce was recently completed for state officials. To tell us about the report are two of the co-authors, an associate professor and executive director of the Institute for Early Education Leadership and Innovation at UMass Boston, Dr. Douglass, and the director of policy and research at the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy at UMass Boston, Dr. Christa Kelleher. Thank you both very much for being with us. I'll start with Douglass. You were an early educator at one time. There was a long time ago. We used to think this is just like babysitting. What do we expect from early educators now?
Well, the job is actually a very complex job. Early childhood educators are working not just with one child, they're working with groups of children with complex and different needs, and they're expected to prepare them socially and emotionally and cognitively and intellectually for kindergarten. And kindergarten is different today than it used to be. So this is this field is emerging and rapidly developing. There's a lot of new brain science behind it, and early educators know all about that, and they put that into practice in the work they do every day.
Christa Kelleher, early educators have to get better and better, but what about the workforce? They're not getting paid much, and who are they?
So they're primarily women and women of color across the state of Massachusetts, and they are very deeply committed to children and to helping to build a foundational experience for children ages 0 to 5. They are very diverse in terms of their entry into the field, and many are looking for professional development opportunities to advance along a career ladder. So they are very much engaged and interested in helping to advance these children in terms of their development and prepare them for kindergarten.
And you start with somebody who wants to advance, but tell me the other factors here. What kind of money they make and how hard it is to advance.
Early childhood educators tend to make relatively low wages, so the compensation is a very big issue in the field, and we're seeing shortages across the state in early childhood programs in finding teachers to staff classrooms. So that's led to kind of a crisis in this state, and it's actually happening in other states as well. So that's one thing. Early childhood educators have expressed in this study we just concluded, early childhood educators expressed a great interest in continuing professional development. But one thing we found is that access to professional development varied depending on where you lived and worked. So there are parts of the state where there's less access. And the other thing we found with regards to professional development access is that there's a lot of professional development offered at the entry level of the field. But for people who've been in this field for many years, and many of the people that we talked with for this study have been in the field for a long time, and they're looking for advanced professional development opportunities, and those are very hard to come by.
Christa, what's also going on, this is a mostly female workforce, they're taking care of kids maybe, they're working other jobs at the same time. How do they find time to do this and still study?
Right, so they are certainly dealing with a lot in their lives as educators. These early educators and child care providers are dealing with the emotional and social development of children. We found through our study that in fact there are more complicated, complex situations of children ages 0 to 5, including trauma, including homelessness, increases in autism and ADHD. And so they're dealing with a lot of children who have a lot of varied needs, and they are trying to balance addressing the needs of those children and using best practices in the field, and they want to advance themselves as educators, as professionals. At the same time, they are underpaid. Some of them do take on additional work. They are going through, in some cases, educational programs to receive their associate's or bachelor's degree, and they often have family responsibilities themselves. So they are managing a lot and at the same time really working to advance the needs of the children in their care, because they know that they have a profound impact on these children's lives, not only in the short term, but in the long term.
This is BNN News. We're talking about a report on the early education workforce with researchers from UMass Boston, Douglass and Christa Kelleher. And what about turnover? Is that a problem in these jobs?
It is a problem. It's been a problem for a long time. There's been a national study that found that turnover is kind of concentrated in a small subset of programs. So it's one of the things that we're really trying to understand with the next phase of this project, which is a representative statewide survey of the early education and care workforce. We really don't have a lot of data. It's been almost 15 years since we've had a survey of the workforce in early care and education in Massachusetts. So that's one thing we're going to find out.
Christa, it's hardly new that these workers deserve better pay and conditions, but I mean, what about that? I mean, wasn't something done about that before, or what's going to happen?
So we're hoping that we're going to learn more about the financial needs of the workforce and the kinds of burdens they have in their lives in terms of college debt and other outstanding needs that they have trouble meeting. Frankly, they are facing economic insecurity as a workforce. That's something we found in this initial phase of the study. And when we do the representative survey, we're going to learn more about their financial situation, especially in the context of professional development and their desire to advance in the field, in terms of how we go about increasing pay and making sure the compensation is appropriate so that they can meet their needs and their families and in their career. That's something that we're hoping good data will inform policy on. We are hoping to have data-informed policy decisions made over the next few years to address the issue of compensation. And it's not just compensation, it's benefits, it's retirement benefits, it's paid leave, it's everything that comes along with a job.
And I have to admit, one of the things that surprised me was to read the bleak kind of retirement outlook for a lot of these workers. Isn't that a problem, Jim?
It is a problem. We think it's a problem, and again, because there's been so little data, I think that's why this study is so important right now at this time. The state has put a big focus and emphasis on the early education workforce, and the early education profession itself has been convening and really mobilizing to try to improve the situation. So they're very much behind this survey so that their voices and their input can be used to inform better policy that's responsive.
Christa, the other thing in the bigger picture here is that we're talking about children in these classes who need quality educators and more of them. I mean, what about meeting that?
So that's where we've been in this state for the past 10 or 15 years, is focused on the issue of quality and ensuring that the access is there for children to be in classrooms with quality teachers and high quality education, and that's very important. And that is one of the strengths of this workforce, is that in Massachusetts, we tend to focus on education. We are a leader in education, but in the early care and education field, we have a long way to go still. There's room for improvement. And I think that these professionals are hoping, through the study that we're doing, to identify opportunities for informing better policy, developing better policy and programs, whether it's scholarships or other ways of addressing the professional development needs, to ensure that the quality is there and that the workforce has opportunities to advance.
Thank you both very much, and Christa Kelleher and Douglas. Up ahead, barriers to care for people with mental illness, but first, this message.